Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Life Paranormal Podcast. I'm your host, Russell Reynolds, coming to you from a Sunday night. Sorry we didn't make it home in time last night. Um, so, uh, so we're here tonight. Before we get started, let's say hello to everybody in the chat. Kelly Lackey, hello. Thanks for tuning in each week. Jeanette, hello. Thanks for tuning in. Michael Bloomfield, thanks for tuning in, and thank you for sharing it out. I appreciate that. Sandy Mary, hello. Welcome in. Michael Gagliano, that sounds like a great talk and all, but could you tell me what a person is supposed to do with a leftover salt and hacksaw? Uh-oh. I don't know what you're doing with that. That doesn't sound right, dude. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to plug a couple events that we're going to be at for you guys. And before we get into tonight's topic, we don't have a guest tonight. Everybody was busy tonight that I've reached out to. So we decided we're going to do something a little different tonight. Um, First event we are going to be at is going to be Mother's Day, May 9th, at Mortuary Manor. This is a funeral home museum, and it was in operation until July of last year, and they shut down and opened it up to investigations in November of last year. Um, there is still some human remains in there, some urns and stuff. Um, Reach out to Eclipse Paranormal on Eventbrite for your tickets. There is two different ticket types. There's general admission that will get you access to the manor, but that's for people that want to go at an investigation at their own pace. My dad and I are the VIP guests. If you want VIP tickets, get them fast to come and investigate with the cousins of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Um, See what we can find together, especially if you're new at it. You'll learn some stuff from us as well. Also, it's Mother's Day. Get a ticket for your mom. Bring your mom on her first paranormal investigation, and she may enjoy it. So, hey, Missy, welcome in. Uh, Kelly, they vary. You would have to go on Eventbrite and look up Eclipse Paranormal, or you can go to eclipseparanormal.com and just she has a link posted there also for it. And I know they're starting at 10 a person and then they go up from there. There is the option if you want to put a down payment on tickets, you can do that as well, even the VIP tickets. Um, our next event we know we're confirmed for is West Kentucky Paranormal Expo, which is being hosted by Josh Morris and Kent Wilson of 1010 Paranormal. Um, we will be there. Aaron G. Thompson is the headliner from 28 Days Haunted. Very cool guy, good friends of ours. He is one of the guest speakers. My dad and I, were also a guest speaker as well. So be sure to come out in September and check this event out. It's one not to miss. There's a whole great lineup of speakers from Aaron G. Thompson to the Wendy brothers. You got my buddies Outlaw Paranormal, Jimmy Rickard. Uh, Several others. Josh Morris is one of them, a host. Jen Jacobs, who's hosting the event in May from Eclipse Paranormal, 202 Podcast, and several other great ones there. So be a lot of awesome vendors there as well. I've got a cousin that's going to be vending there too, so make sure you check out her merchandise. She's got a lot of 3D printed stuff that she makes. So she's going to be there. We are confirmed for Bordertown Paracon in August this year. As soon as that flyer gets out, I will post all the details and stuff like that. They're still working on the details and stuff. So that is another one we are definitely confirmed for. That's in August. Um, so that was the young man doing from your last investigation. He's doing all right, doing pretty good. So we're gonna go ahead and get into the show. We're gonna start off with. Could you email me infos on tickets? Yeah, I can do that. I'll send you all the info on it, and I'll send you the link for Eventbrite. Hey, Jimmy, welcome in. I'm just talking about West Kentucky Paranormal Expo that we're all going to be at this year. Um, so we're going to get into the show here. Um, Tonight's show, we're going to talk about two topics in the paranormal that I find pretty interesting. A lot of you paranormal investigators find it pretty interesting too. Can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait either, brother. It's going to be a good one. So, we are going to first talk about the Gansfeld experiment, which is called the Gansfeld effect. Um, Many of you know this. It is sensory deprivation, like we do. It's a typical Estes method that we do. Um, so, participant in the Gansfeld experiment, a Gansfeld experiment from the German word of the entire and field is an assessment used by parapsychologists that they can test for ex- extrasensory perception, ESP, or telepathy. In these experiments, a sender attempts to mentally transmit an image to a receiver who is in a state of sensory deprivation. The receiver is normally asked to choose between a limited number of options. A receiver who options for what the transmission was supposed to be, and the parapsychologist who proposed that such telepathy is possible argued that rates of success above the expectation from randomness are evidence for ESP. Consistent independent replication of Gansfeld experiments has not been achieved in spite of strenuous arguments by parapsychologists to the contrary. There is no validated evidence accepted by the wilder scientific community for the existence of any parapsychological phenomena. Ongoing parapsychology research using Gansfeld experiments have been criticized by independent reviewers as having the hallmarks of presumptuous scientists. The historical part of the Gansfeld effect was originally introduced into experimental psychology due to the experiments of the German psychologist Wolfgang Metzer from 1899 to 1979, who demonstrated that subjects who were presented with the homogeneous visual field would experience perceptual distortions that could rise the level of hallucinations. In the early 70s, Charles Connerton of the Manorides Medical Center was trying to follow in the footsteps of the physical researchers such as Joseph Banks Rhine, who had coined the term ESP to evaluate and discourse around paranormal claims. Honorton focused on what he thought was the connection between ESP and dreams and began exposing his research subjects to the same sort of sensory deprivation that is used in demonstrations of the Gansfeld effect. hypnotizing that it was under such conditions as PSI, a catch-all term used by parapsychology to denote anomalous psychic abilities, might work. Orton believed that by reducing the ordinary sensory input, PSI conductive states would be enhanced and PSI meditated information could be more effectively transmitted. Since the first full experiment was published, Orton and Sharon Harper in the Journal of American Society for Psychical Research in 1974, the Gansfeld experiments have remained a mainstay in parapsychological research. The experimental procedure in a typical Gansfeld experiment, a receiver is placed in a room, relaxing in a comfortable chair with a half ping pong balls over the eyes, having a red light shown on them. The receiver also wears a set of headphones through which white or pink noise static is played, which is much like we do with the Estes method. The receiver is in the state of mild sensory deprivation for half of an hour. During this time, the sender observes a randomly chosen target and tries to mentally send this information to the receiver. The receiver speaks out loud during the 30 minutes describing what they can see. The experimenter, who knows nothing of the chosen target, records these comments either on audio tape or through written notes. Once time expires, the receiver is taken out of the Gansfeld state and shown a set of possible targets, from which they select one which most resembles the images they witnessed. The receiver may refer to the notes recordings made by experimenter as needed. Most commonly, there are three decoys along the target, giving an expected rate of 25% by chance over several dozens of trials. Some parapsychologists who accept the existence of PSI have proposed that certain personality traits can enhance ESP performance. Some parapsychologists have argued that certain characteristics in the participants could be selected for what would increase the scores of Ganfeld experiments. Such traits have included the following: positive belief in PSI, prior PSI experiences, practicing a mental discipline such as meditation, creativity, artistic ability, emotional cloneness with the sender. Critics have pointed out that relying on selection criteria like this can introduce bias in the experimental design, and so generally discussion of any claimed effects has typically included only studies that sample normal populations rather than selecting for special participants. And the analysis of the results, the early experimenters between 74 and 82, 42 Gansfeld experiments were performed by parapsychologists. In 1982, Charles Horton presented a paper at the annual convention of the Parapsychological Association that presented his summary of the results of the Gansfeld experiments up to the date. Horton concluded that the results represented significant evidence to demonstrate the existence of PSI. Ray Hyman, a psychologist and noted critic of parapsychology, disagreed. Hyman criticized the Gansfeld experiment papers for not describing optimal protocols, nor including an appropriate statistical analysis. He identified three significant flaws, namely flaws in randomization for choice of target flaws and randomization in judging procedure, and insufficient documentation. The two men later independently analyzed the same studies and both presented meta-analysis of them in 1985. Hyman discovered flaws in all of the 42 Gansfeld experiments, and to assess each experiment, he devised a set of 12 categories of flaws. 6 of these concerned statistical defects, and other 6 covered procedural flaws such as inadequate randomization, inadequate security, possibilities of sensory leakage, and inadequate documentation. Orton himself had reported that only 36% of the studies used to duplicate target sets of pictures to avoid handling cues. Over half of the studies failed to safeguard against sensory leakage, and all of the studies contained at least one of the 12 flaws. After considerable back and forth over the prevalence and importance of the flaws, Orton came to agree with Hyman that 42 Gansfeld experiments had included in his 1982 meta-analysis could not in themselves support the claim for the existence of PSI. In 1986, Hyman and Horton published a joint communicate with agreed on the methodological problems on ways to fix them. They suggested a computer automated control where randomization was the other methodological problems identified were eliminated. Hyman and Horton agreed that replication of the studies was necessarily before final conclusions could be drawn. They also agreed that more stringent standards were necessary for Gansfeld experiments, and they jointly specified what those standards should be. Otto Gansfeld by Ray Hammond in 1983 with Lee Ross, Daryl Bem, and Victor Benassi. 1982, Horton had started a series of Otto Gansfeld experiments. That this Gansfeld experiment controlled by a computer at his psychological research laboratories. The trials continued until September of 1989, and in the 1990, Horton et al. Published the results of 11 Otto Gansfeld experiments they claim met the standards specified by Hyman and Horton in 1986. These experiments, 240 participants contributed 329 sessions. Hyman analyzed these experiments and wrote they met most but not all of the strategic standards of the joint communique. He expressed concerns that the randomization procedure and the reliability of which he was not able to confirm based on the data provided by Hartman's collaborator Daryl Bem. Hyman further noticed that although the overall hit rate of 32%, 7% higher than the 25% expectation from randomness, it was significant that he hit the rate for static targets, pictures, was in fact consistent with the random, therefore inconsistent with Horton's previous claims of positive results from the Gansfeld experiments that were conducted prior to 1982. The significance of the results was due entirely to a new set of dynamic targets, videos, and participants were able to identify at a rate what was better than random. In the hit rates regarding the dynamic targets, however, patterns were evident that implied visual clues were leaked. Most suspicions patterns was the fact that the hit rate for the given target increased with the frequency of occurrence of that target in the experiment. The hit rate for the targets that occurred only was right at a chance of expectation of 25%. For targets that appeared twice, the hit rate crept up to 28%. For those that occurred 3 times, it was 38%, and for those targets that occurred 6 times or more times, the hit rate was 52%. Each time a videotape is played, its quality can degrade. It is plausible then that when a frequently used clip is the target for a given session, it may be physically distinguishable from the other 3 decoy clips that are presented to the subject for judging. Hyman wrote These studies were an improvement over their old counterparts, but were not successful replications of the Gansfeld experiments, nor a confirmation of PSI. He concluded that the Otto Gansfeld experiments were flawed because they did not preclude the possibility of sensory leakage. Richard Wiseman published a paper discussing a non PSI hypothesis based on a possible sender or experimenter acoustic leakage in the Otto Gansfeld of the account for the results. David Marks had written why Wiseman and his colleagues identified various different ways in which knowledge of the target could have been leaked to an experimenter. These include cues from the video cassette recorder and sounds from the sender, who of course knew the target's identity. Their conclusions provided little reassurance that sensory cueing of the experimenter was in any way substantially blocked. Milton and Wiseman carried out a meta-analysis of Gansfeld experiments in other laboratories. They found no PSI effect. The results showed no effect greater than chance from a database of 30 experiments and non-significant Stouffer Z of 0.70. Lance Storm and Supert et al. Published a meta-analysis of 79 studies published in 74 and 1996 that concluded the positive, statistically significant overall outcome indicates PSI effect in response. Milton and Wiseman, 2001, wrote the meta-analysis of Storm and et al. Was not an accurate quantitative summary of the Gansfeld research, as they had included early studies of which had been widely recognized as having methodological problems, which make it impossible to interpret the results as evidence of a PSI effect. Another meta analysis was conducted by Darrell Bem, John Palmer, and Richard Broughton, in which the experiment was sorted according to how closely they adhered to the pre existing description of the Gansfeld procedure, including some experiments that have been published in the time since Milton Wiseman deadline. They obtained results and were significant with the Stauffer Z of 2.59, but their detractors maintained their selection of studies were in conclusion problematic. Contemporary research, the Gansfeld experiment has continued to be refined over the years, and its current incarnation, an automated computer system, is used to select and display the target's digital auto Gansfeld. This is the potential to overcome some sort of shortcomings of early experimental setups in the randomization experimental blindness with respect to the targets. In 2010, Lance Storm, Patrizio Tresidoli, and Dr. Lorenzo De Risso analyzed 29 Gansfeld studies from 97 to 2008, and of the 1,498 trials, 483 produced hits, corresponding to the hit rate of 32.2%. This hit rate is strategically significant, with 001 participants selected for personality traits and personal characteristics thought to be PSI conductive were found to perform significantly better than unselected participants in the Gansfeld condition. Hyman, 2010, published a rebuttal to Storm's ETAL, concluding that the Gansfeld studies have not been independently replicated and had thus failed to produce evidence for PSI. According to the Hyman relistance on meta-analysis, as the sole basis for justifying the claim that an anomaly exists, that the evidence for it is response to Heyman claiming the Gansfeld experiment design was proved to be consistent and reliable, but parapsychology is a struggling discipline that has not received much attention, so further research on the subject is necessary. Rauter in 2013 wrote that the critical evaluation of storm meta-analysis reveals no evidence for PSI, no plausible mechanism, and omitted replication failures. In 2016 paper examined the questionable research practices in the Gansfeld experiments and simulated how such practices could cause NURIS positive results. And a lot of criticism. Richard Wiseman was suggested various sensory leak problems with the Otto Gansfeld experiments. There are several common criticisms of some of all Gansfeld experiments. Isolation. Richard Wiseman and others argue that not all studies use soundproof rooms, so it is possible that when videos were playing, the experimenter could have heard it, and later given it involuntary cues to the receiver during the selection process. It could have been possible that the receivers themselves could hear the video. Randomization: when subjects are asked to choose from a variety of selections, there is an inherent bias to choose the first selection they are shown. In the order in which they are shown, the selections is randomized each time. This bias will be averaged out. The randomization procedures used in the experiment have been criticized for not randomizing satisfactory. The PSI assumption: the assumption that the statistical deviation from the chance of evidence is telepathy and highly controversial. Strictly speaking, the devotion from chance is only the evidence that either this was a rare, strategically unlikely occurrence that happened by chance or something that's causing deprivation by chance. Flaws in the experimental design are common use of this, and so the assumption that it might be telepathically is fallacious. Writing in 1985, CEM Hansel discovered weakness in the design and possibilities of sensory leakage in the Gansfeld experiments reported by Carl Sargent and other parapsychologists. Hansel concluded the Gansfeld studies had not been independently replicated and that ESP is no nearer to being established than it was 100 years ago. David Marks, in his books, The Psychology of the Psychic, has noted that during the Otto Gansfeld experiments, the experimenter sat only 14 feet from the sender's room. Soundproofing tiles were eventually added, but they were designed to absorb sound, not to prevent transmission. According to Marx, this is inadequate and no different than using any standard internal wall. The door and door frame were also a possible source of sensory leakage, and none of these problems were ever eliminated. Trent Hines wrote in 2003 the Gansfeld studies could not be said to provide evidence for PSI, and alleged evidence disappears as tightness of the experimental controls is increased. As research progressed, variables in science became clearer and more studies are published, and the describer under what scientific condition and particular effect can be demonstrated. This is in opposition to the Gansfeld studies. According to Hines, there is no clear way to obtain results showing any psychic phenomenon reliability, and that the most reasonable conclusion was that the effect did not exist and had never existed. In 2007 review, Ray Heyman wrote that parapsychologists agree to have no positive theory of PSI, as it is negatively defined as any effect that cannot be currently explained in terms of chance or normal causes. Hyman saw this as a fallacy, as it encouraged parapsychologists to use any peculiarly in the data as a characteristic of PSI. Heyman also wrote, parapsychologists have admitted it is possible to eliminate the possibility of non-paranormal causes in the Gansfeld experiment. There is no independent method to indicate the presence or absence of PSI. Though parapsychologists can provide a positive way to indicate the presence of PSI, The different effect sizes that can occur in experiments are just likely to result from many different things rather than one thing called PSI. Indeed, given the obvious instability and looseness of the findings, the best guess might be very well be that we are dealing with a variety of Murphy's Law rather than revolutionary anomaly called PSI. Ray Heyman, evaluating parapsychological claims in 2007 in their book 50 Great Myths of Popular Psychology 2011, Scott Lilienfeld and his colleagues have written that the Gansfeld being a reliable technique is far from being resolved. They concluded that ESP has not been successfully demonstrated in experiments for over 150 years or so, so this is hardly encouraging. In a 2013 podcast, Brian Dunning reviewed the flaws of the Gansfeld studies and came to a conclusion the technique has failed as evidence for PSI and interest in Gansfeld has declined. In 1979, Susan Blackmore visited laboratories of Carl Sargent in Cambridge and noticed numbers of irregularities in the procedure and wrote about them in the Journal of the Society for Physic- Physical Research. She now appeared in one session, number 9. The following events had taken place. Sargent did a randomization Hey guys, we're back. We lost internet for a few minutes. Can you guys hear me now? Hey Rebecca. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. StreamYard just crashed for some reason. It was on their end. Okay, awesome. We're back. Let me get my stuff back. I had to log out and log back in again. Yeah, that was weird. It just cut out like that. So what do you guys think so far of Gansfeld, the Gansfield experiment with the sensory deprivation? It is kind of similar to what we do in the paranormal field, um, with Estes, and I mean now they got the Deco goggles that do the red light for you when you're under Estes method, which is similar to the Gansfeld method. But yeah, I mean, I could see back then they didn't have noise canceling headphones like we do now, and so back then, I mean, it could easily stuff could have been leaked. Like when we try to do Estes method, and I learned this from the late Dan Rivera from Nesper. When you're doing Estes and you're asking questions, you want to ask them real low. That way, there's no chance of that person under Estes if you're in the same room, or go out of the room, go into another room, leave that person in that room by themselves, and have someone sitting there writing down the answers. You ask questions from a different room, so there's no chance of them hearing you. And you have someone with a notebook writing the questions down. Or another little trick you could do is take the notebook, write the question down in the notebook, see what the spirit box, when they're under relaying the message, what the answer comes up with, and just write it under your question is another idea. Pretty cool. Done something like that at the Monroe House. Awesome. Um, we're gonna move on to our next topic. Um, which many of you know this place, the Borley Rectory, which is where this theory took place as well. Too, it's one of the most haunted places. Um, how many of you are familiar with the stone tape theory in the paranormal? This is another interesting topic that is in the paranormal field. One I've also find fascinating. I've heard a lot of paranormal podcasters talk about this. KD and Austin Maynard talked about it. Um, and it's a pretty interesting topic. It kind of makes you think, um, with the stone tape theory. And basically, the stone tape theory is a pseudo-scientific claim that ghosts and hauntings occur when dramatic events are imprinted on certain stones or other materials and are subsequently replayed similar to a magnetic tape recording, which is kind of like your residual. The idea of materials holding information from emotional events align with the views of 19th century intellectuals and psychic researchers such as Charles Babbage and Eleanor Sedgwick and Edmund Gurney. Contemporarily, the concept was popularized by Nigel Neal's 1972 horror drama television play, The Stone Tape. The history of it, the idea that environmental elements are capable of storing traces of human thoughts or emotions, was introduced by multiple 19th century scholars and philosophers as an attempt to provide natural explanations for supernatural phenomenon. In 1837, the polymath Charles Babbage published a work on natural theology called the Ninth Bridgewater Treatise. Babbage speculated that spoken words leave prominent impressions in the air, even thought they became inaudible after time. He suggested that it is possible due to transfer of motion between particles. Stone tape theory could also be derived from the concept of place memory. In the early days of the Society for Physical Research, place memory was considered an explanation for ghostly apparitions, seemingly connected with certain places. In the late 19th century. Two SPR involved investigators, Edmund Gurney and Eleanor Sedgwick, opinioned that certain buildings or materials were capable of storing records of past events which could be played back later by gifted individuals. Another 19th century idea associated with the stone tape theory is psychometry, the belief that one can obtain knowledge of an object's history through mere physical contact with it. In Kirka 1940, the idea that objects were able to store and play back past events were reintroduced by then SPR President H. Price. Price postulated that sort of the psychic either as an intermediate medium, being spiritual or physical reality, enabling objects to carry memory traces of emotions or experiences from the past. Price added that it ought to be possible to verify these traces' existence by the ordinary methods of physical science. But so far as we know, this cannot be done. Following Price's ideas of the archaeologist turned paranormal researcher P.C. Lethbridge claimed that the past events could be stored in objects thanks to fields of energy, which he believed to surround streams, forests, or mountains. His 1961 book, Ghost and Ghoul, popularized these ideas, although Leatherbridge never used the exact term stone tape in the book or any other. And if someone gets an organ or bone replacement from another person, can the DNA? Yeah, because it's a physical object that that memory is attached into. Sort of like Gettysburg, how you have that land, everything is implanted in that land, and that's why you have the hauntings of Gettysburg, because of them soldiers dying there and replaying and stuff they've said, stuff they've done. That's why you hear the residual cannon fire, you hear drums out there, because all that is implanted in the land. Case that we do on my cousin's property also has that same trace, because the land itself has a lot of stuff implanted on it. The Mormons settled there, and when the Missouri governor ordered the eradication of the Mormons to get them out of Missouri here, there was a big Mormon battle that happened there with the Ray County militia. So, and the governors were all Confederates from the Civil War that came in with the militia and started after the Mormons. So her land there is just all tainted with memories of the past from all that wars and people living there. It's got confirmed slaves, Native Americans, so all that stuff that they've done back then and said back then is all implanted in that land. So that's another theory of the stone tape theory there as well. And many of your historic locations, like for instance the Glen House that we just did, the memories of the family are still implanted in those walls and in that wood and that energies in that building. And that's basically what the stone tape theory is energy. Um, like objects, that's why your dolls and stuff and your things that are people are attached to that you buy from antique stores that they were happy with. That's why their energy is attached to it. That's another version of the stone tape theory. So that also brings up with the concept of it as well. Um, so when you with that stone tape theory, so that brings up, especially if you're psychic, you're gonna see that replaying in your mind as well too is what they did too, and then that's where your residual energy comes from too. That you'll see that figure walking through a wall that used to be a doorway at one time. So they're just replaying it just like a record over and over again. And this is something you see quite a bit in the paranormal field when it comes to that with the stone tape theory. And it has a big part in that H. Price is that Harry Price. He's one of the legends in the paranormal field from England that investigated the stone tape theory and also investigated a lot of psychic claims Harry Price did. Um, between him and Morris Gross and stuff like that, which carried over here into America with my cousins Ed and Lorraine Warren as well. So, and Lorraine, with her being a gifted medium, she could touch an object and see the whole thing play out, especially touch a wall and see what went on in that house because of her being a clairvoyant. And so that's what you get when you get your lot of your residual stuff when it comes to that. And so place like they said, place memory and stuff like that, and it gets played back to gifted individuals. But even like the Gansfeld experiment, when you're doing the Gansfeld experiment, and it's somebody's in a location too, and we're listening to that box, you're getting what's left over in that. So if you get a donation part, you're stuck with that person's memories. Yeah, I mean, it all depends if they want you to see that. I mean, some won't let you see it, but I mean, the residual, they have no place in time, so they have no recollection of you. You may see them, but they don't see us. And that's also part of, like, say, this wall here is holding energy of the past people that lived in this house. And my house has confirmed deaths in it. And one of the owners died here, so everything that their memories were in this house stay in this house. I'm being bruised up. I had surgery Thursday. And sorry to hear that, Jeanette. You had surgery Thursday. I bet you're being bruised. But I mean, that's even like where we're going. We're going in May to Mortuary Manor. There's a lot of people that's gone in and out of those doors. Um, where we're going here, I mean, there's a morgue, there's an old funeral home, so you still got the memories of the lost loved ones that may have came back to make sure their body got where they were going. Um, Also, the memories of people saying things during funerals, so about the person. So all them objects and walls and everything, they absorb the energy of everything that went on in the land. And like my cousin's place, Jesse James went through there. Um, the wars that happened on the land. I mean, the land is stained in blood from the battles. So, um, and they still have things that go in and out through there once in a while. Things pass through, um, and you're not going to stop it. I mean, the amount of cleansings you do, you chase it out, but it's still going to replay itself over and over because it's implanted in that land. And then when you build a house on that land, it starts implanting in your house. So that's another theory to ponder on is when you got land that's been tainted with blood and violence and all that, and you build a house on it, that's why you end up with a haunted house. Because it's not necessarily something that you brought in, it's something that may be connected with the land. So when you buy land, do your research on it before you build a house on it. Find out what happened there. Because a lot of real estate companies don't have to disclose if a murder happened on that land or if you're buying a house that's on that land. They don't have to disclose that anything happened in that house or the house is haunted or if something happened on the land that the house sits on. So I know some states are starting to do that, but there are several states that don't require it to do that. So especially do your research if you're buying a piece of land or property with a house on it. Go to the courthouse, check the land records, find out because they're going to have history of if any murders happened or anything like that or any violence happened. I mean, even here in Missouri, we've got battlefields too here in Missouri that are haunted just like Gettysburg. We got the ones down in Springfield, Missouri. We got the ones in Lexington, Missouri that are all haunted from all the battles and the Civil War soldiers dying there. Like the haunted movie theater we do, there was a girl that was right about 100 feet from the movie theater that disappeared. She was kidnapped and murdered. They found her 17 years later, washed up in the Missouri River, strangled to death. And she is now haunting the movie theater because that's the last place she seen when she was kidnapped. So she haunts the place. The manager of the movie theater from the 1920s, he died in California, but he also haunts the movie theater because that's where he was. His memories are there. They're implanted in that building. Um, the man that was shot out front, same thing. He haunts that place, and he frequented that movie theater as well, also. And he died right there on the sidewalk, right out in front by the front doors. So, um, and there's also Civil War history in that town as well. That a bunch of the Confederates got ambushed. They had a base in the town square that they were setting up, and they got ambushed there, and a bunch of them got killed. There's also an old hotel there that's converted into a restaurant that we investigated out there, and there was a lady that lived there, and she died there, and she haunts the upstairs. And we actually captured her singing there one night when we were investigating. She was actually humming a tune upstairs, and she never did set our equipment off. So we caught her residual energy implanted in that building and those walls because that was her apartment that she lived in, and that's where she died. And down in the basement, there used to be I guess, a little brewery down there that they were bootlegging moonshine down in there at one time. And when they opened that basement up, it had been sealed. They put a floor over it, and they never knew it was down there till they ripped the floor open and found the basement. And there's a whole bunch of liquor jars down there and stuff like that. Another good example is this old hotel we did. The George Opp, the owner, he was from Germany. He loved that hotel. His memories are in that hotel, so now he haunts it. He's buried in the cemetery right in town there, right up on the hill, so he can overlook his farm and his hotel. And he haunts that hotel, him and his wife both. And my dad and I seen him one night. We when we spent the night in there, we stayed overnight in there. About 3 o'clock in the morning, we seen him. He was standing in the doorway looking at us. And so his memories are all in that because he ran a speakeasy in the basement for the Kansas City mob, and he bootlegged liquor through there and stuff like that. So that would be another good example for the stone tape theory as well. As even like I said, haunted objects is another good example. My cousin's museum is a prime example of that too. Um, Energy manipulating objects. So with all between the demonic stuff, and there's stuff in there that's probably got regular spirits in it as well. That so um, there's a good scenario there as well. And I've been seeing a lot of posts lately about Annabelle. Is Annabelle real? Annabelle is real. Um, I know somebody showed a page from the book that Ed and Lorraine wrote, The Demonologist, saying that Ed debunked Annabelle. He didn't debunk Annabelle. He's saying the doll itself is not haunted physically. The doll is a vessel. Inside the doll is the entity that's attached to Annabelle. But people want to toot their horn and say that, oh, it's been debunked and this and that. If you've ever been around Annabelle, you will learn real quick. You do not challenge Annabelle because Annabelle will challenge back. Um, but people need to stop tooting their own horns about that and stop putting so much energy into Annabelle. I know she's the famous haunted doll, and a lot of people think that Annabelle is the doll from the movie. That was just made for the movie. Annabelle is the Raggedy Ann doll, and people saying there's a news article that Lorraine's holding Annabelle. That is a prop Annabelle doll that they used for media because they did not want to take and hold the real Annabelle doll for that. Lorraine would never hold that real Annabelle doll. So people need to stop saying, oh, that's Annabelle she's holding. No, it's not. That prop doll is owned by Rick Clark, and you can actually see Rick Clark on an episode of my podcast where we talk about it. So it is his prop doll that they used. He's an original member of Nesper. So hope that clears that up so people stop with the garbage, and people with the garbage that they're frauds or fakes. Half of you never actually met the Warrens. You never worked with the Warrens. You never investigated the paranormal. And you want to toot your horns. You don't know nothing about them. You're believing what the lies are on the internet. If you actually met Ed and Lorraine Warren in person, you'd actually know for a fact they're legit at what they do. You people that are tooting your horns for your 5 minutes of fame, I hate to tell you this, many people have tried to destroy the Warren name. Many people have failed. So just leave them alone. They're gone. Let them rest in peace. And stop with the garbage. That's all you see online now is Ed and Lorraine Warren this are frauds. Ed and Lorraine Warren did that. And I'm going to tell you right now, the 15-year-old that you guys are saying isn't true either. Yes, they were friends with Judith Penny, but she did not have an affair with Ed. And Lorraine did not cover nothing up. So quit with that garbage too, because I'm tired of seeing it. And they're my family, and I'm tired of people trashing my family. So quit it, because you're not going anywhere. You're just making yourselves look bad. So I'm letting that be said now because it's nonsense. Stop with the garbage. My family don't need to see it. Judy don't need to see it. So quit it. Every time she logs on, you see Ed and Lorraine's frauds and all this garbage. Quit it. They don't need to see that. Let them be. If you don't like the Warrens, keep it to yourself. Don't go after the family and go after us family members for it because you think they're frauds. Keep that opinion to yourself because we don't want to listen to it. We're out there continuing their work and keeping their legacy alive, and they're the legends. If it wasn't for them, you paranormal investigators wouldn't be doing what you're doing today. So stop tooting your horn for your 5 minutes of fame and leave the Warrens alone. They are the legends in the field, and they'll always be the pioneers. That's why they're the most controversial couple. If you actually investigated residential cases, you would understand there's a thing called client confidentiality agreements. We have forms that our clients fill out that are confidentiality agreements. So half of the stuff is not allowed to be posted. And then you guys don't understand they didn't have the technology like we do now. So how are they? The only thing they went in was a notebook, tape recorder, and stuff like that. That's all they had. I've seen their tools that they used and a box that had religious items in it. So people need to leave the Warrens alone and just stop. It's getting old already. That's like when the late Dan Rivera passed away. Everybody was all over it that Annabelle did it. Annabelle did not do it. If you knew Dan in person, Dan was the most compassionate guy going. He'd give the shirt off his back to you. He loved educating the people and keeping Ed and Lorraine's name alive. He was nothing what you guys say about him, and Annabelle didn't do nothing to him. He only moved Annabelle once that you seen on YouTube, and that was it, to her new case because the old one was falling apart, and they didn't want to take the risk with that. That was the original case they moved her from that Ed had built. So, And in fact, Ed was in England when Lorraine had the carpenter build that first case for Annabelle. So there's a little bit of history for you guys. Because Ed was actually at the Enfield house working, assisting on that case, which wasn't even their case. That was Morse Gross. The Warrens were there to assist, but Lorraine ended up coming back and Ed stayed out there. So Lorraine had the case built for Annabelle, and Ed knew it because he called back there to Lorraine and asked Lorraine, "Hey, are you messing with that doll?" Because he knew somebody was messing with Annabelle. And she had that case made to surprise Ed. And the priest is a true story that it did hurt a priest because he challenged it. He threw her across the room and said, "God is more powerful than the devil." And then he was on his way home in his brand new car, looked in the rearview mirror and seen Annabelle, and he hit another car head on. So, but he didn't die. He broke his leg and some ribs. So we're gonna let it lay there. People just need to stop because that's all we're seeing on these pages, the Ed and Lorraine pages. A lot of them are bots that are running those pages. Us family are in those pages looking. So, and we come on there and we see Ed and Lorraine are frauds and this and that. We don't need to see that because you guys can't prove nothing about them. You're sitting there trying to debunk them and you believe everything on the internet. That's like telling everybody that's worked with the Warrens are frauds, including family. Just stop already with it because we're sick of hearing it and we're sick of seeing it. And their legacy is alive and well and it lives through all of us. And there is more supporters of the Warrens than there are haters. So remember that. And we're going to continue their work and keep their legacy alive as long as we can. And many of you got your wish. You didn't want to see Annabelle on the road anymore. She's off the road for good now. So, but there is still family of the Warrens still traveling, and we're constantly having to deal with controversy over it. People just need to stop. And I'm going to warn you now, if I see any hate comments come on this after this live, they will be deleted and you will be blocked because we're not dealing with the hate anymore from it. So, new year, people need to just move on for it and just leave the Warrens alone. Let them rest in peace because they don't need it either. And like I tell people all the time, does it feel good to trash two people who aren't here anymore to defend themselves? And if Ed was alive, he'd fire back at all of you that trash him. So leave him be and let him rest in peace. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Um, Jeanette Bowman, love your family, met them. I wish I could have met it. Yeah, I wish I could have. I could have met them too. They both passed away before I could get to meet them, but I know from talking to family and learning, I learned a lot about them. I learned a lot from John Zaffis, their nephew, about them. Tony, also Wade, Rick, those guys. I've learned a lot from them about Ed and Lorraine. Right, Sandy's never gonna happen. And even Jason McLeod that worked with them, I've learned a lot from him too. Everybody that's worked with the Warrens, I've talked to, even grandson. And again, if you guys are going to the house to investigate, please be respectful when you go there. Do not call out Ed and Lorraine. If they're there, they'll let you know. They'll welcome you. Don't go in there provoking, calling them out, or challenging Annabelle in the museum or any of those objects. You do not want to challenge those objects in that museum. They are, a lot of them are dangerous. That shadow doll, especially. That shadow doll creeped me out pretty bad when I. Yeah, that shadow doll, she's intimidating. That's for sure. I don't care for that shadow doll. I'm not afraid of Annabelle. Annabelle don't bother me, but that shadow doll is one that gets me a little bit. Um, but don't go there challenging those items because I've got items in that museum as well, and those are demonically possessed items, and they will challenge back. You challenge them dolls of mine in there, they're going to challenge back, and one's known to cause heart palpitations. So do not go in there thinking you're big and bad and you're going to challenge them because they're all going to challenge back. And my demonology studies, you make a deal with the devil's going to come calling. You make a deal with the demon, he's going to haunt you for the rest of your life until you rebuke him and get rid of him. Because yeah, they are demons are rare, but they are real. They lie in dormant, so they wait for they're the perfect opportunists, and they wait till like to come out. They know everything about you. They know the car you drive. You've had your name changed. They know your name, your original name. They know your family. So they are crafty little creatures, and they won't stop till they get what they want. And they love to prey on the innocent. So if you got little kids at home and you're doing occult practices and stuff, you're endangering your kid because that's what they target. They go for the kids because they're innocent and their brains aren't developed like ours are. They're not taught what's real and what's not. So, and the reason why they disguise themselves as a child because they want you to invite it in. Child's warm, innocent. So we invite it in, we think we're talking to a child spirit, and we're actually not. That's like the story with Annabelle. Everybody thinks there's a child spirit in Annabelle. It's not. God does not let a child inhabit a doll at all. That is something demonically in that doll that's disguising itself as a child. That's why they want you, that's why they pick dolls. And you probably heard me talk about this before, like the Amish culture. The Amish people, their kids' dolls have no faces. They have no eyes, no mouth, no nose, just a blank face. That's because in the Christian Amish religion, they believe that if the dolls have faces, you're looking into the eyes of the devil. So that's why their dolls have no faces. And that's why they inhabit dolls because dolls are innocent. You're going to want to take a doll and hold it like this. You hold it up to your heart. It mixes with your heart chakra. That attachment in that doll attaches to you and then starts wreaking havoc on you. And so, also before we end the show here, I got to work tomorrow, so we're gonna cut it short tonight instead of our 2 hours. Um, check out Voyage St. Louis magazine. I am in it. Um, there's pictures of my dad and I in it. There's an interview. Um, just go on the website and it's Voyage Magazine STL, which is they're out of St. Louis. Look up Russell Reynolds, and it'll take you right to my article. And if you want to learn a lot more, I explain a lot in that article. Um, we do have some podcasts coming up as well. Um, I'm waiting to confirm on a few dates yet, but I know we are booked on several podcasts. I know definitely March 27th. My dad and I are on Eternal X Wolfpack Paranormal podcast on All Access TV Network. We're guests on there. And then I'm booked for several others all the way up to June. So um, be sure to come check those out. Bring your questions. Again, May 9th, come see us at Mortuary Manor, um, and get your tickets. Kelly Lackey, I'll email you the link. Um, so come investigate with us, Cousins of the Warrens. Those are you'd have to purchase VIP tickets for those. Um, and then uh, we are confirmed for Paracon that's already posted. It's in West Kentucky. The West Kentucky Expo we are going to be at. This is for all you that are just tuning in. It's going to be a good Paracon. There's a lot of big names that are going to be there as well. Let me see, get some of these pulled up here again, and show you. A lot of great vendors that are going to be there as well. Good speaker lineup. This is put on by Ken 10 Paranormal, who you saw we were at the Glen House with for his birthday. Um, so the headliner for this year there is going to be Aaron G. Thompson from Netflix 28 Days Haunted. If you go on my YouTube channel, further podcast back, he was on my show. Aaron's a good friend of ours. We actually got to meet in person last year at Rock Island Paracon and got to talk for a little while. My dad and I are one of the guest speakers there. The speaker schedule is coming. They're still working on the speaker schedule, but it's September 26th, 2026 in Mayfield, Kentucky at the Mayfield Fairgrounds. This is the whole lineup of guest speakers. The Wendy brothers, you got Outlaw Paranormal, my buddy Jimmy Rickard and Jeff. Uh, Kelly DeMarco, you got 202 Podcast. Jen Jacobs, Josh Morris, and a few others that are going to be there. Jen Jacobs is the one that's hosting our event, the event May 9th at Mortuary Manor. So if you want to meet her ahead of time, get your tickets for Mortuary Manor. And it's going to be a good investigation there. We're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to meeting you guys in person that watch the show and tune in each week. So it's going to be a good investigation. We can't wait. Especially if you're going with us. we'll be doing some experiments and stuff like that. Like the human pendulum, and we'll probably be doing some Estes as well. And we've got some surprises coming out here pretty soon. I'm not gonna dive into it yet because I don't want to ruin the surprises yet. We got some stuff coming out, so I'll let you know when it comes out. I'll be posting it. So let's just say you guys are gonna love it. So, with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and get off here. Again, I apologize for whatever happened earlier with StreamYard that it cut out. Um, so we will be back definitely next Saturday night, same time, same channel. Um, Remember, if you're being bullied in the paranormal field, you do have a voice. Nobody's better than anybody in this field. We're all after the same common goal to prove the existence of life after death, and for most of us to help people in with paranormal experiences and to teach and educate them. Like with us, our buddies Ken 10, you get no jump scares. Everything what you see is what you get. There's And for you new investigators out there, it's not like what you see on TV or what you see on YouTube with the YouTubers. How they're going in places and getting everything. Half of the time, it's boring. You're sitting there for hours waiting for something to happen, and sometimes you don't get nothing. So, for with us and several of our investigated friends, it's what you see is what you get. We don't catch nothing. That's what you're gonna see. And if you want to check out the video, go to Ken 10 Paranormal on YouTube. Return of the Glen House, and he put out a pretty good video. You can see our Estes method. Um, as you can see in that video, there's nothing fake. Everything is legit. We weren't hyping nothing up. What you see is what you got. Towards the end of the video, I'm going to tell you right now, you will see us performing a cleansing on a darker entity that was brought into that place. We were asked by the Christie who runs the place and the board to get rid of that dark entity that was there that was brought in. Somebody had brought it in with a Ouija board, and because she does not allow Ouija boards in that location, tarot cards, none of that occult practices or anything like that is not allowed in that Glen house. But you can see at the end of the video, you can see us get rid of it. Myself, my dad, and Kent from Kenten, and his son he actually filmed it. And if you look behind me, you will actually see a shadow dart right behind me. And so yeah, definitely check that out on YouTube, Kenten Paranormal. I'll be posting video as well. I was live on Facebook, so I've got some video that I've recorded. I'll be posting it. So I'm going to put it together. So, with that being said, everybody, God bless. Have a good night. And we'll see you all next week. Same time, same channel. Happy heavenly birthday, Cousin Lorraine Warren. Yesterday was her 99th birthday. So, happy birthday in heaven, Cousin Lorraine. And we will see you all next week. Same time, same channel.